Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited today that we have Erin Prosser with us, and we're going to jump in just a minute on this really critical topic of IEPs and this awesome crash course that she's going to take us through. My name is Gabi Conacher. I am co-founder of Deep Connections. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We cover topics that are critical to families who have children who are severely impacted by rare epilepsies. So that's really what we're here to do. And I know this is a topic that's of really critical importance to lots of families. I know I've struggled through this a lot. As always, feel free to reach out to us if you have ideas for webinars that you'd like to see us put together. While we're going today, you should know if you're joining us as a participant, you're off camera, you're muted, so don't worry, you can do your laundry or whatever it is you need to do in the background. We won't see you or hear you, but we would love to engage with you during the webinar. So please feel free to use the chat as a way to comment and share what's going on, if things resonate with you, if something comes to mind. And then there's the Q&A as well. At the end, we'll definitely go through that and spend some time going through some scenarios and, thinking through some of the challenges that we have. I will say that we're probably not going to get into specific troubleshooting today for specific issues and cases, but if you have concerns or general ideas that you think are worth kind of putting out here and having Erin jump in and discuss for us, please bring them up and let us know. I'm going to just quickly introduce Erin. She is mom to Lucy, and who has STXBP1. So she's a member of the rare epilepsy community and has spent the last 5 years deep diving into IFSPs, IEPs, and learning the ropes and building her skills, and now is kind enough to turn around and want to help us do better with this as well. So we're really thrilled to have you with us today, Erin, to help us learn the ropes and get the tricks, to do better by our kids, because we all are always trying to fight the system to get more. So we're really excited to hear from you today.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me. This is just something I love talking about. I'm very passionate about. And yeah, it's a struggle. It's a process. So I feel like if there's any questions, as Gabi mentioned, if there's any questions as we go along, put them in the chat. And then Gabi, you can either wait till the end and save them for me, or if you feel like there's a point where you want to interject, I'm happy to pause. Perfect. If you feel like there's something that we should pause for. So
sounds great.
Cool.
Thanks, Erin. Take it away.
Okay, just share my screen. Oh gosh. You see all of my backgrounds. What a mess we have. Oh my gosh.
Somehow yours is cleaner than mine.
Somehow it's gone now.
Of course it is.
Of course it's gone. It worked perfect in the trial. You see Lucy's schedule for the next week of craziness. So fun. And I think this was my last version. I'm so sorry, Gabi.
No worries. It happens. In the meantime, what I can do is I can just ask people if, while we're waiting, have there been challenges that have arisen for you around your IEP and or the process or the challenges that you've had that you think would be interesting for us to troubleshoot in terms of general, challenges that have come up? I mean, I can certainly put some on the table when we get to the discussion time. I do know that Erin has had a lot of success in negotiating more hours than I probably have seen other people get. So I'd love to hear more about how you do that, some of those kinds of things. So I'll let you take it away, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, that's, it becomes a point of pride at some point. So let's just dive in. Sorry for the technical glitches, but that always happens, right? So we're going to dig into the IEP. This is a crash course. This is not everything. There's a ton of just components to the IEP process that are, you could, go down a rabbit hole for hours, but we're going to try to do a top line here. So as way of introduction, I'm Erin. It's nice to be here. I'm a rare mom, like most of the people who are probably logged in right now, an epilepsy mom, an infantile spasms mom, medical mom, keto mom, an STXBP1 mom. I used to have hobbies, I joke, but for real, it's a lot, right? So I used to be a marketer by profession, and then in the last several years have just been working on Lucy's IFSP. My daughter is Lucy. You can see her right there in the middle. I have an older little boy, Sam, who's a couple of years older than her. So she's 5, he's 7. They are the best. But I've worked really hard to get Lucy the hours that I feel like she needs in her IEP the last several years, and have gotten pretty good at securing some hours and services that she needs for the school day and just for her to be successful in life, right? So I've taken it a step further and have gotten certified in IEP coaching, and am really excited to help people, especially in the rare disease community, get the hours and accommodations that they need for the school, for school and for home, for life. So this is the agenda for the day. We're going to do just a quick backstory, why I'm here, what I'm doing, IEPs at a high level. So the mentality that you should be taking while walking into the room, IEPs on the real. So like, what are some practical things that you can do tonight, tomorrow, in your next meeting that will help you and serve you, and ultimately your child in the next meeting. And then how to work with an IEP coach, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So this is Lucy. She is my Y. She's the best. She was born May 3rd, 2018, just perfect for 3 days. And then she had seizures on day 3. We were off to the NICU. Her seizures were uncontrolled. They eventually evolved into infantile spasms by month 2. And by month 3, we had a diagnosis of STX-BP1. For those of you who aren't familiar, STX-BP1 is a neurodevelopmental disorder. It accompanies with global delays, seizures, spasms for some, not all, hypotonia, usually nonverbal diagnosis, and severe to profound intellectual disability. So it's a whole host of things that you never really wanted. So the first thing that we did for Luce was to get her into therapy. So a lot of early intervention services, PT, OT, SI, eventually speech, and just found that the more she was a hard worker. Like everything that we threw at her, she was participating, and she was working to the best of her ability to meet all of the milestones or the inchstones that she was able to accomplish. And so I just found it really beneficial for us to be doing as much therapy as we could for her, because she was able to tolerate it, A, and B, I just felt like it gave me more knowledge, more information on how to work with her in the home. And just learning from other experts and people in the different disciplines that she really needed help in. So this is Lucy now. She's 5. She graduated preschool on Friday. Tears for everybody involved. So she's my big girl now, and just graduated. Today was her last day of preschool. But she is sunshine in human form. Like that's how like everyone describes her. Like you can't not love her when you meet her. She's just the best. She loves anything that makes a funny noise. She loves pushing, kicking, throwing balls. She loves people that sing. She loves Miss Rachel. If you guys are a fan of Miss Rachel on YouTube, she's a speech therapist. Highly recommend. Also slightly annoying, but she's great. We love her. She loves shakers. She loves her people. She's obsessed with her brother, and her dad, and men. She's a little bit of a flirt. So she's just the best. But she's nonverbal, and she has a lot of communication issues. I would say her expressive language is not where we want it to be, but I think her understanding is pretty strong. So that's Luce in a nutshell. We found that therapy really helps for her. As I mentioned, this is what her IEP looks like right now, graduating preschool. It didn't all come at once. It's a slow burn, these IEPs. So this is where we're at the moment. She was one of the first kids in Pennsylvania to have in-person services resume during COVID. Telehealth was not working for us. So I basically climbed the chain of command at the Department of Ed and got it reinstated. I was like, come in my house, wash your hands, wear a mask, let's go. So she's a hard worker, and if she's going to put in the time and the effort and energy, and she wants it, like it's not going to be because of her lack of opportunity that she doesn't get the things that she needs. So that's always been my mentality for her. So this is my mission, right? So I think that rare kids need rare IEPs, and that's the one thing that I keep coming back to is that these kids aren't typical. They're not, they're special in a certain way, but they need, their IEPs shouldn't look like other kids' IEPs. So if people are telling you that you think that these hours are a lot, well, they need a lot. They need repetition. They need help. So it shouldn't be because of their lack of opportunity that they don't get what they need. Another reason that I'm a big proponent of service hours is just that we have medically complex kids. There's hospitalizations, there's, illnesses are frequent. I feel like when Lucy gets sick, she's sick longer than my son. There were seizures and infantile spasms. So if she's only getting speech therapy, for example, 1 day a week, then she's only getting speech and she's sick and she misses a session. Well, then she hasn't had speech for a whole week. So it's the idea of multiple shots on goal and being able to have as many opportunities for her to work with professionals that can help her meet her goals. Sometimes our kids are tired, they're over medicated or they're overexerted or they're, they need time to warm up. I know Lucy requires motor plant. She has a lot of motor planning issues, joint tightness, and repetition is something that's so needed. Sometimes she'll take 5 or 10 minutes to warm up into an activity and then she'll get it and she'll be like, okay, this is what you want me to do. You want me to put this ball into this bucket? Great, I can do that. But at the beginning, it's like she has to remember how to do the thing that you want her to do. So I'm going to dig in a little bit here into some things to remember, keep in mind when you're going into an IEP meeting. Just the things that have in the back of your head. So to start off, IEPs are like a roadmap. You get your roadmap is the document itself. So you're looking at where your child is, the present levels, and where you want your child to go. So those are the goals. And then that middle part is like, how are you going to get there? Like those are the services and supports. So you kind of have to look at where they are, where you want them to go, and how we're going to get them there. And that's basically the IEP, right? So you need to plan your route. You need to have a strategy going into them. You can't just willy-nilly show up and just be like, oh, I'll figure it out without Google Maps. You have to pick your destination, prioritize your journey, and then rinse and repeat. IEPs are never done. They're never perfect. They're constantly evolving. And so I feel like if you're willing to put in the time and the patience into the process, then that's how you sort of get rewarded with the things that you're looking for. So I know everyone talks about this, FAPE, it's like people's favorite thing to talk about in education and disability rights. So IDEA law protects, it's a nationwide policy. So that's regardless of what state you live in, where you live, IDEA protects your child's rights. And I'm just going to read it because I feel like everyone focuses on the FAPE part and they don't necessarily focus on the latter part of it. And I think the latter part's really critical. So IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Those 3 things are what I am trying to do for my daughter all day, every day. Like I am trying to prepare her for further education, employment, and independent living. How can she have as many independent skills as I can get her to have? And so IDEA protects that. So that's something to just always remember and keep in your back pocket. Apologies for the use of all my GIFs. I hope that they are sticky for you and mildly entertaining. My sense of humor is a little whack sometimes, but I hope you appreciate it. So moving on, remember you are your child's voice, right? So some of us have nonverbal kiddos, right? They can't speak up for themselves. And once I sort of wrapped my head around the fact that Lucy would be nonverbal, I was like, okay, well, there's literally no one else. Like I'm it, like I'm her person. I'm the person that's going to speak up for her. There's no one else. Like she can't do it for herself. And there's no one that's going to be like, you know what, Erin, do you think you think Lucy could use 2 more hours of speech therapy? Like that's literally never going to happen. And so if I don't ask for these things, like they won't happen. And at the end of the day, like don't ask, don't get. Like if you 100% won't get the thing that you ask for. So I feel like half the battle is just being willing to step up to the plate and ask for the things that you want in a way that's backed by data. And you're not asking for the world, you're not asking for everything, but you're being really specific about what you want, and firm in that. The other thing to remember is that you are an active member of the IEP team. I feel like this is always said as well. But the active member part is really critical. Like, yes, you're a member of the team, you're on the list of people who are going, but like you are participating in this. You don't just have to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. You need to go into the meeting with confidence and remember that you know your kid better than any person in that room, right? Like there's nothing that's going to shock you. There's nothing that's going to be an evaluation or report that you're not like, yep, I know. You're like, no one's going to be like telling you something you don't know, don't already know about your child, right? You know them best, you have known them the longest, and you will know them the longest. So you know what's right for them. And I think trusting your mom gut or your dad gut is like the best thing that you can do in these meetings. So some quick hit things of things that you have control over, right? When you're an active member of the IEP team, you can choose the date, the time, the attendees, the agenda. Those are pretty basic things, right? But sometimes those things aren't so simple or so mundane, right? If the time doesn't work for you, the date doesn't work for you, reschedule it. Like you are a member of the team and you need to be an active participant. The attendees piece seems like a little thing, but I did that when Lucy was attending her kindergarten transition meeting, and they said, hey, we're going to have a kindergarten transition meeting to talk about placement and where we're going to send her. And I said, great, who's going to be in the meeting? So they sent me the list of people, and I'm looking at all the email addresses, and I noticed the back end of the email was people that that worked at my son's school, the elementary school in our area. And I was like, hey, just so you're aware, my goal for Lucy is for her to attend an approved private school. Sometimes it's called a therapeutic day school, depending on the state. And they said, oh, well, she needs to be like, why do you want her to attend a therapeutic day school? I said, yes, she has STXPP1. This is her history. This is why I think this is the most appropriate option for her. They said, okay, great. Thanks for letting us know. Do we have your permission to evaluate her? I said, yes, you do. They were like, let's cancel this meeting and we'll reschedule a new one with new people. So then the next time we came to the table, it was a whole new crop of people that were talking about an approved private school as opposed to sending her to public school. And so that is just asking the attendees in the meeting is sometimes a little more fruitful than you would think. And that's happened on more than one occasion for me. So it's always good to know who's going to be in the room. And if there's someone that you don't know, that's a great opportunity to be like, who is this person? Oh, it's her new speech therapist this year. Like, we should meet before the IEP meeting. Let's talk one-on-one. It's a great opportunity to know who's going to be in the room. So down the rabbit hole we went right there. Other things that you have control over: the location, whether or not it's virtual or in person. I find it to be a lot easier to do. I know in-person meetings are happening now. I find it easier to do it virtually. I prefer virtual IEP meetings because then I can have my second screen up and I can have my notes and I can have my data and I can see everything all at once, as opposed to walking into a meeting where I have like books that I'm like shoveling around and a million papers with the IEP all marked up. And you can also, something else you have control over, you can call an IEP meeting at any time. You don't have to wait until your annual meeting. If there's something that's bothering you, something that you don't think is quite right, you can call an IEP meeting and ask for it. In fact, that's part of the process. And then all final decisions, that's something that you have control over. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to sign it. So all of those things just to keep in mind. Also remember, and I have to remind myself of this sometimes, you get more bees with honey. You have to assume the best and plan for the worst. People get into special ed because of good intentions, but you should just complement the things that you see that you love, right? So I know that Lucy's OT, for example, she always does these amazing activities that are like these multi-prong activities. It's like, I saw that you were working on her wrist rotation, that you got her to do a 2-button hit for a thing that she wanted. You introduced a new vocabulary word on her iPad. Like, you just did 3 things that are working on 3 different goals in one activity. I love that. Like, Kate, that's amazing. Sorry, probably shouldn't have used her name, but she is the best. And so letting people know that like when they do something awesome, that you like love it, and like this is I want to see more of this, like this is great, and getting excited about that, because it shows appreciation to the team when they are working hard. You want them to know that you're not just here to complain, that you are also appreciative of the work that they're putting in. And then gifts and notes of appreciation, gifts, it doesn't have to be like $100 gift card to every therapist that your child works with. I just sent a bunch of flowers to school today from my garden. It didn't cost me anything other than time and like finding a grasshopper in one of them, but like picking out a grasshopper, but like, just doing something sweet and nice for the team, it goes a long way. You also have to remember to be assertive. So I will say that you will not get the best offer in round one. I joke, funny, not funny. I typically liken an IEP to a woman getting a job offer. You're not going to get, there's more money, but they're not going to offer it to you, right? And so you have to ask and you have to push. So there needs to be negotiation. And so I think if you're speaking from your heart, you're asking for things that you want, and you're providing reasons and rationale that are supported by the data, then you can push and get the things that you want. Bringing a security blanket if you need one. I go to meetings with clients from time to time. Sometimes people feel like they just need an extra person in the room to take notes. It doesn't even have to be an IEP coach. It doesn't even have to be a lawyer or an advocate. It can literally be like your friend who has the same disorder as your child, and maybe they just come and help you feel more secure, right? Maybe I'm coming with Gabi to her child's IEP meeting, and I'm like, they say something, and I'm like, hey Gabi, do you feel like you're making a face, you're making a face like you don't agree with that. Do you agree with that? Do you really agree with that? Just someone that knows you well, they can attend the meeting with you. So going back to the attendees list is up to you. And if you don't know what to say, my go-to is always, it's not good enough. And then you sit and you wait for the awkward pauses to die out. And when I don't know it, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not good enough. Like if that's the hill I'm dying on, then that's what I say. The other thing to remember is that IEPs are a process. This is why they are a pain. This is why they can be frustrating. This is why you feel like everyone's making you jump through hoops when you already have a million hoops to jump through. Try to be patient. It's really hard. I know, even for me, it's hard. I'm like, oh, I know that this is how it's supposed to go, but it's still very frustrating. But there are steps that have to be taken in order to get the things that you want, right? So I had a mom that was asking for a one-to-one, and she was like, oh gosh, like I asked for a one-to-one, and now they want an IEP meeting and they want to talk about data. And I was like, that's actually good. Like that's what they're supposed to be doing. They're following protocol. They're doing the things that they're supposed to do on their end. IEPs are a legally binding document. They're doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing by setting a meeting with the entire IEP team to talk about your concerns, why you're concerned, and they want to document that. They want to be able to say, okay, this is why we think this child needs a one-to-one. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to collect data. So they want to collect data? Great. Let's make sure the data makes sense. We'll dig into that in a little bit. But yeah, IEPs are a process, and you kind of have to be patient. And letter writing can go a long way in terms of getting that process started and that process more efficient. The better letter writer you are, the better you are at writing parent concern letters, the more you can get accomplished in a shorter period of time. And you need a no before you can get a yes. So you have to find out why they're saying no, and then you have to figure out how to get to a yes. And this moves us to our next section. So these are more of our tactical to-dos, things that you can do like right now, like tomorrow, next week, whenever your next IEP meeting is. So you can sing the Lion King song if you want to your team, but really you want to prepare your team. You want to prepare the IEP team, right? So there is a section in your IEP that says child strengths. There's another section that says parent input. So a lot of times these two sections are left completely blank and they fill them out during the meeting. That is not a great use of that space, in my opinion. You can write these things out in advance. In fact, I would recommend that you do that. Send them in advance. This gives the team an awareness of what your child can do. What are they good at? What are they motivated by? This will help them form and shape their goals. Having an parent input section filled out, that tells them what you're looking for them to do. What are your hopes? What are your dreams? What are your plans for the future for your child? What are you hoping that they do in this school year? that makes them, what does success look like for them, right? And anything that you're concerned about, like, hey, I want to keep an eye on the PT hours are going down when Lucy goes to kindergarten. I want to make sure that that's not going to be something that slips with her. We need to make sure that she's not regressing in her physical skills. So I'm actually working on Lucy's right now. It's mostly done. It's just not quite where I want it yet, but sending this in advance will really give the team some insight into, it gives them the ability to read this before they start developing the goals, right? So if they know what the child's strengths are, they're going to be developing strategies that hopefully mirror the things that motivate your child, and the things that they're really good at. So this gives them a leg up and actually like helps them do their job a little bit better. Prepare yourself. Okay, so if you take nothing away from this entire webinar, if there's one thing that you're like, hey, stop folding your laundry, listen to this, like, do this, please. Request a printed copy of your IEP. I know that sounds super simple, but some people don't do it, and it drives me bananas. So request a printed copy of the IEP. Some school districts are really great at, like, they will print it for you. They'll drop it off at your house. They'll mail it to you printed. You can go pick it up. Other school districts won't do it unless you ask them for it. If they say no, you can say, hey, I'm actually an active member of the IEP team, and in order for me to be fully prepared during this meeting, I need a printed copy. So some districts will push back. I would say the majority don't. I would say there's probably a third that are really good about sharing it in advance without you asking, some that won't do it unless you ask, and then the other third will be like, well, we're not quite done. And it's like, all right, well then push the meeting back a week. I need to, in order for me to participate, I need to read the IEP. I can't just show up to a meeting and have it be story time and have you read me my child's education plan from on high. I need to be able to have a thought about it. I need to have questions. I need to write in the margins. I need to highlight. I need to get my red pen out and get all crazy. That gives you an opportunity to just really understand what they're proposing, which is fair, right? So the other piece of that is with hours. So some school districts will not give you with hours. You can ask for it. Some will do it, some will not. So you can just say, I would love a printed copy of the IEP with associated recommended hours for the services that you're recommending. So for me, I want to be able to see, like, okay, are you recommending, how many speech goals do you have? You have 3 speech goals. Okay. And you're recommending 1 30-minute session a week. So if you're doing the math here, then you're telling me that you're going to accomplish each of these goals is going to be, you're going to be spending 10 minutes on each of these goals. And that's it. So that's not going to accomplish the goal. So the goals matter. The hours associated with the goals also really matter. Like, you need to be able to look at those side by side and understand if they make sense. And I don't know about you, but I can't do that quickly in a meeting. I need to be able to really understand that. There are some ways around figuring out if they don't give you the hours that, I work with my clients sometimes. I'm like, well, what do we think they should be? And then when they give them to us in the meeting, whether or not we agree with them. So there's a way to get around that. Also, another thing to do to prepare yourself is writing yourself an action plan. I do this for all the IEPs that I do, is just getting down all the things that I want to make sure that I cover off on every point that I want to discuss with them. If it's a quick question, if it's something that's like, hey, can we change this to that? Or actually, she already did this goal. Like, there's just things that you want to make sure that you're really buttoned up during this meeting, and that you have all of your, if there's questions, and then prioritize that list, right? Like, so you need to, like, you can't just come in there and be like, oh, I hate this, and this doesn't work, and this is wrong, and like this data point doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a lot that can be edited in an IEP, but making yourself an action plan and making sure you're prioritizing that is a really good idea. Okay, so this is, like, I feel like the total embodiment of like what IEP meetings kind of feel like, but knowing your priorities and knowing what the hill is you're willing to die on. So for me this year, it was speech. I was like, we've got to figure out speech. We haven't done a good enough job of it. What does Lucy's device look like? What are we working towards? What's the plan for the future? We've we worked, this was the speech was the hill I was willing to die on, right? So you can't, to my previous point, come in with 18 priorities and them all be priorities. You have to know what you're willing, what your stake in the ground is going to be. Next is to remind them of your child. Hey, this is Lucy. Meet Lucy. Lucy's really good at, Lucy really likes when Lucy's best at ... So reminding them of your child, I think, is a very disarming thing. I always make sure that Lucy is part of the IEP process in some way, shape, or form. So either I bring her in on stage and I'm like, hey, here's Luce, check her out. Isn't she cute? Like, this is who we're here for. Let's not forget. Let's not lose sight of who we're here for, because she's the best. Or I'm like showing them a picture on my phone, or the way that I talk in meetings is like, this isn't for me. Sometimes it feels in IEP meetings, sometimes can feel very combative. And it's like the mom against the school district. And it's like, no, that's not it. Like, this is collaborative. This is in an effort to help this child reach their fullest potential. And so, like, let's not lose sight of that. So sometimes showing a picture or bringing them on screen or bringing them to the meeting itself can be helpful, because they're real cute, right? All right, so data, little hot tip on data. Just make the data make sense. Data can be used for or against in any argument. I feel like the data in Lucy's previous IEPs that we've seen has been just like a hot mess of information. And they'll just read it to you, right? So you're like, 3 out of 16 times she did this, 4 out of 26 times she did this, 17 out of 25 times she did this. And I'm like, guys, I can't do math that quick. I need you to make this make sense. So either do the math and give me a percentage so that I can see month over month, is she accomplishing this goal? Is she getting better? If she's not, we need to change some things. We need to change the strategy. We need to change maybe the goal, maybe the amount of times that we need to, something needs to, if it's not moving in the right direction, we need to change something. And then if I can't understand the data, then I don't know what to fight for, right? So the data has to make sense. So either do an activity 10 times, do it like, and I can do quick math there. If you're telling me she got it 2 out of 10 times, okay, 20%, 9 out of 10 times, okay, we're looking a little bit better. I can do quick math there. But if you're going to make me do like a million different, like out of, if the data is always changing and moving, and we want the data to tell a story, right? So, is this activity working? Is this skill being developed? I need to be able to understand that. And so if the data doesn't make sense to you, you need to work with the team to make it make sense. All right, so here's a laundry list of everything you can ask for. There's more than this, but these are the big things people ask for. So the IEP in advance, don't forget that. Service hours in advance, the date, the time, location of the meeting agenda, the meeting attendees, more therapy, less therapy, a different therapist, an AAC evaluation, trainings, a one-to-one, ESY, transportation, compensatory services, classroom accommodations. There's so much you can ask for. But again, remember what the hill is you're willing to die on. You can't go in with this list that this guy has and be like, hear ye, I need all these things. All right, still need help? You can work with me. It'll be fun-ish. I love working with families, especially rare disease families, kids with complex communication needs. It's my jam. So if you need help, let me know. ErinProsser.com is my website. I do 20-minute free consults for anyone that's interested. Feel free to email me, Erin@ErinProsser.com. Email me your top 3 concerns so that I know what we're going to talk about, so we can make the most out of our 20 minutes together, and send me 3 dates and times that work for you. And it's as simple as that. And either you can just pick my brain for free for 20 minutes, or you can work with me and we can work on an ongoing basis. We can work on a yearly basis. I do packages. It just kind of depends on what you need. But that's the quick and dirty on the IEP stuff. I'm happy to take any questions and stop sharing my screen. You can also follow me on Instagram. And if you want to follow Lucy's journey, we're a lot as a family. We didn't even get into half the stuff, but we're a fun time. We're kind of a lot. We're a little bit of a mess, but we're a fun mess. So you can follow me on Instagram as well if you want. I'm always open to
relate to that. Most of us probably can. So
that's right. It's part of the gig.
It's part of the gig, right? That comes with the territory. Well, that was awesome. I really enjoyed listening, and you know, I learned some new things in there about what I can ask for and should ask for. And I know every time I go into an IEP, I feel super stressed out and
It's
like
stressful.
yeah, it is. And it's like there's a lot on the line. You're deciding like what's going to be available for your kid for the coming year. I love the tip about that you can call an IEP meeting every time. I think a lot of people maybe don't know that or forget that if you're unhappy or, you know, need something additional added or new goals, or
Mhm.
that's a great thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I even like if especially the backup, if they won't give you the IEP in advance, I'm like, okay, well, we can schedule an extra meeting because I will have no feedback on this
right, right,
until I have a chance to read it. I need to read the IEP. So like if I can't read it, then I have nothing to say and you'll have to wait for we'll have to schedule another meeting for me to have a thought.
right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm going through this too, but I think there's a lot of pressure for schools too, because they're legally bound to have IEPs in place for these kids. And if they're not in place, right? So you have leverage too, right?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah, you do. I mean, you do and you don't. There's certain things that are against the parent, and there's certain things I think that are against the school district. There's timelines that are put in place. So
Yeah.
once they send you the IEP, you have 10 days to sign it or decline it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I will strategize that in a way that benefits me. And I'll
Yeah.
wait until the last day to say, no, actually, I don't agree. This is not acceptable and here's why. And we can do an informal meeting, but this is like the hill I'm dying on, and I will use those words. um so you just have to, you can't ask for everything, but you can make a difference. And I just think that we can do better. I'd love to like break the system from the inside. Like if more parents are asking for more things, then like maybe there's a way to make a bigger impact, both for our kids, but on a more national level.
Right. Yeah. Well, empowering families to know their rights and how to
To ask for
the
it.
best possibly to ask what to ask for, I think is a great start. So
Yeah.
if anybody who's listening has a question or wants to ask Erin something, feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A. In the meantime, can you clarify what a parent concern letter is and how we can use those, Erin?
Yeah. So a parent concern letter is anytime that you're concerned, a parent is concerned, right? It's so I didn't even know these were a thing, but it's a little more formal of a document than just sending an email, right? So you want to send something that is professional, that's buttoned up, that is attached to the file. It's not just an email. You would PDF it to make it look a little more official. You would say, hey, I would like this attached to his or her file. Make sure that everybody's aware. These are my concerns. And then you lay out whatever it is that the thing that you're asking for. So if I'm concerned about not having a speech evaluation, hey, my daughter is 3.5 years old. We've been in the school for 6 months. I keep asking for a speech evaluation or for an AAC evaluation, and I'm not getting one. She needs this to be able to access her education. I've asked for this several times. You try to document as much as you can. I've asked for it on this day. I've asked for it on this day. I've asked for it in person. I've asked for it in email, and I'm not getting anywhere. I need this done. Who else can I speak to? I need a response on why my child is not qualified to receive an evaluation. We need to get moving on getting a device in hand. So depending on what the situation is, right? Like a parent concern letter is a lot can be done with that in terms of writing that letter and making it sound more formal and not just like, hey, can I get a one-to-one, or hey, can I and
Right.
sometimes you can get things accomplished that way, but when it's a little more formal and buttoned up,
Yeah.
it forces the team to get together and make a true decision on it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And there was a clarifying question about the 5 hours of speech therapy. Somebody wanted to know if that was for a month or for a week that you get that.
A week
Okay,
every
that's
day.
a lot. Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I definitely want to know more
She
about
would start
how
with
you,
that.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it probably just depends on the school system too, right? Like what's standard, like, I mean, in
It's
DC,
not the standard. Everyone that talks to me is like, how did you do, what is that? Like, what, like, we can't accommodate that. And I was like, sure you can. Send me Lucy's schedule for kindergarten. What does it look like? Okay, here are 5 places within, or here are 8 places within her school day where I can see speech therapy very easily fitting in.
yeah,
So tell me why that's not okay. Like she's nonverbal.
right.
Like,
So
and I
that's
should,
definitely on the IEP.
like, I'm always like, yeah, like, it's almost like I feel like I have to apologize for it, but I'm like, no, I don't have to apologize for it. She's nonverbal. She needs speech every day.
Yeah.
Like, how would I, it's like, I liken it to, I have a 7-year-old son, right? So if I was like, hey, you've never ice skated before, but I want you to be a really good ice hockey player by the end of the year. And I'm going to let you practice 30 minutes a week, 1 day a week for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I want you to be awesome. And I want you making the team by the end of the year. Like, and he has all his STXBP1 protein. Do I think he's making the team by the end of the year? No, I sure don't. So like, don't tell me that like an hour a day is too much therapy for my daughter. Like, I know what she can handle.
Yeah.
Also, like I'm wound a little tight. I'm a little crazy, right? Like, so it might not be for everybody. 5 hours might not, what's good for my kid isn't good for your kid, isn't good for someone else's kid, right? Like, we're all different. And so maybe it's like, hey, she has 3 hours a week and she's exhausted when she gets home. Like, PT is crushing her and she's not here for it. And she's cranky during the day. And we want to go down to, we don't even want to do PT in school. We just want her to focus on her education, and we'll do PT outpatient when I can be there with her so she's not crying. I mean, it's literally up to the parent and their child and their family and their situation. Like, everyone is different. And so it really depends on the things that you think that are going to be effective for your child, the things that you want for them. We all want different things. I want Lucy to be able to communicate her basic wants and needs. So communication for me is very high on my list of priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, we're learning that communication is really high on the priority list for most families who have kids that are nonverbal. And we're
Yeah.
doing a big Inchstone survey right now. And that's definitely coming up as, you know, those are the things that we want to be able to get our kids to communicate their wants and needs as much as possible.
Yeah,
So I'm with you
that's
there.
definitely the STXBP1 conference that I just attended a few weeks ago. That was in all of the survey work that was done. That was like the #1 thing.
Yeah.
So not
So,
surprising, but
right. And I think that parent who wrote in like 5 hours, is that for real? So, but I love that approach of let's step
yeah,
back.
I mean, it didn't start there. It started at 3 hours, and that was pulled over from early intervention. So one thing that I didn't mention was I think one of the things that worked really well for me and my, I guess, bulldog personality is that when she went from IFSP to IEP, from like that 3-year-old, like 0 to 3 and then 3 to 5 transition, I was like, well, we're making progress where we are. Why would we go down in hours? So my goal was to get as many hours. My advice to parents, if you can handle it, if your child can handle it, if your family can handle it, um, to try to get those hours up while they still have an IFSP, because it's harder to take them away. It's harder to go down. It's harder for them to say, okay, well, she had 5 hours. You know, we went to kindergarten. They were like, well, she gets 1 hour here. And I was like, we can't go from 5 to 1. That's insane. I'm like you can't convince me that she's not going to lose skills significantly from going from PT every day to 1 hour a week. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah. So there was a question about how is data tracked and used? Like, how do we use data as a tool, you know? And I think that, you know, the question was really about what is typically tracked and how is it used?
So data is tracked for every goal that you have, right? Like, every goal, they even say like how they're going to track it. So if it's like, hey, we are going to Lucy's going to learn how to, you know, use her wrist more effectively and be able to like put something into a container. They will develop strategies, and the strategies are really what they're going to be doing. Like, okay, what are some activities? What are some things that what are some activities that we can give her throughout the school day that can mimic this motion that we want her to make from a fine motor perspective? And then being able to track, like, okay, we did this activity and this activity, and this is how she did. So if it's something where it's like a wrist rotation, she was able to dump, you know, 10 balls into a dump truck 20 times in 40 attempts, and she was accurate this amount of time. So it depends on what the goal is, and it depends on, but every goal is tracked with data. So they want to make sure that they're and they don't track it. They say that they track it every day, but in terms of actually physically writing it in the IEP, it's usually about twice a month.
And how can we arm ourselves better with data? How can we kind of use that?
So I think, so for me, I always want so the example that I gave was like, I can't do fast math. Like, I need you to be able, I need the story to make sense. So over the period of time, like, what are we looking at, and how are we determining what's success? Like, what are we determining is a successful, like, hey, we check the box, the goal is accomplished. So if we are, for example, using the risk turning activity as a goal that Lucy needs to understand and work on, we need to be able to track what she's doing over time and be able to monitor that and see, like, over the months, like, is this really moving the needle, or is this not really working? Is the strategy wrong? Is it the time of day? Like, what are the things that are contributing to the goal not being accomplished if it's not being accomplished? And if it is, then great. You should be able to see that the data should show that the goal is being accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And
if it's not clear, like, a lot of times I just find the data is just data. It's just like numbers on a page. And so that's what I mean by, like, make the data make sense, make it make sense for you. So for me, I'm like, do every activity 10 times and then I can do quick math, or like, show me a chart, show me, like, hey, over the last 3 months, this is what we're looking at. So a lot of some school districts are pretty good at tracking data and like sort of making the data tell a story. Other school districts are just throwing a bunch of numbers into an IEP document and they're saying, this is where she is.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is that good? Is that bad? Are we closer? Like, what you want me to sit here with my calculator and like tally everything up? Like, that's wasting everyone's time in an IEP meeting.
Yeah.
So holding the team accountable to either giving you percentages or whatever the activity is, you have to, individually look at whatever the goal is that you're tracking. But whatever makes sense for you in terms of, like, yeah, if she's doing this 80% of the time, like, I would consider that a success. Great. And if we're there, then and we're there consistently, then let's check the box and pick something different and move on.
And that data could be built into the goals too, right? So you can say, well, maybe she's doing it 2 out of 10 times now. Our goal is going to be 5 or 7
Yeah.
or
Success is 80% accuracy,
mm-hmm.
or whatever success looks like for you.
Yeah. So
it's 100. A lot of times school districts will say, like, oh, if they're 80% accurate, they've completed the goal. And so families are like, well, if they're not doing it all the time, then the goal isn't complete. Like, there have been goals where they're like, she's accomplished this goal. And I'm like, no, she doesn't do that at all at home. Explain how this is an accomplished goal. So
yeah,
having data that is telling you a story, it's telling you if it's working or not, is helpful in helping you make decisions on whether or not the goal is actually being met.
Yeah. I mean, part of the challenges that I've when I talk to families is also getting the right kinds of goals, so for example, like, there are some kids who are maybe more severely affected, like they just don't know how to get the right kind of goals in place. Like, we've experienced that myself, and I've talked with other families that they just don't know how to create goals for these kinds of kids, right? And so, like, for example, for us, we had to put in a lot of qualifiers for things. So, like, when Elliot is, prepared and like ready and like willing, and like, when, like, if he's not asleep, then like obviously you can't count that against him if he's asleep or he's, so it's like when they're kind of present and able to, be engaged, that's when you have to be counting what's working for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's obviously other factors when you're trying to accomplish goals like that. Like, hey, they're having an off day, or they're like, we're always, maybe the speech therapist is always coming in the afternoons, and the kid is like just done with lunch and they're in a food coma. Like, they're like, I'm full and I'm tired and I've been working all day and I'm just not into it. So, like, maybe there's something that we need to do to switch up making the goal more accomplishable. Like, is it always happening in the afternoon? Because if it is, that's not his best time of day.
Yeah.
So it's taking all of those factors in, because so many things have to go right, in order for our kids to accomplish these little things. But holding the team accountable, I think, is part of the problem and part of the solution.
Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, that's another thing that I was talking with somebody about this webinar coming up, and they were saying to me, like, the school just doesn't even have the right team. They don't have the right people who could do this for my kids. So like, how do I argue with that? Like, I'm trying to get the right services, but the speech
Right.
therapist has no idea how to work with my kid. They just don't know how to manage it. So like, is there a way to
Yeah.
advocate in that
I
kind of
mean,
scenario?
especially when it comes to like AAC, that seems to be,
No.
you know, a niche field that like a lot of like even just like regular school districts, public school districts don't have an AAC person on staff. So they need, but they need, this is what your child needs to be successful in the school day. So it's not like these people don't exist. They may not exist in that school environment. So sometimes it's helpful to seek out other people. So, you know, I don't want to go too far into different backstories, but like, you know, you try to find other professionals and say, hey, I understand that you don't have an AAC person on staff here. I actually work with this person in the home and they're willing to come into the school and train the school. Like, why don't we work with them here? You have to be a creative problem solver. I feel like there's a lot of times where the school district's like, well, we don't have that. So we can't do it. And it's like, well, no, that's not an acceptable solution. Like, this is how my child communicates. And so we need to find a solution. We can't just like throw our hands up and be like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. So, or we don't have that kind of personnel on staff. And it's like, well, this is how he communicates. So we need to find an AAC person that's willing to either contract with the school. And I've done that. I've like either found people that will contract with the school. But the school districts do contract with other professionals, even if they don't have them on site at their exact facility. Even like APS schools have done that.
Mm. And for anybody who may not know, an AAC is an augmentative and alternative communication device. So, you know, like a tablet or something that people use to
An eye
communicate.
gaze or
And
a
I think,
tablet or a dedicated device. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's the key to remember too, is that if they don't have these people on staff, they're required to find it. You don't have to pay for it. They have to, if they can't provide that service, they have
Yes.
to find the right.
The school district needs to pay for that. That's not something that comes out of your pocket.
Yeah. No, that's
There's a
really,
big conversation about like what, you know, school supplies should you have to buy versus there's other things that you can get the school district to pay for.
mm,
A lot of things like they have in place, but it depends on the school, right? So like a public school isn't going to have a slew of gate trainers or standers, but if you go to an APS school, they have a ton of them because they work with a bunch of different vendors all the time. And so they have all of that equipment at their disposal and can bring stuff in. So it just, you know, it's again, another rabbit hole that we could go down, but placement alone is like sort of your first step of like, where am I going to send my kid? It's like
right.
a big decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something
And
that
there's pros and cons to both of like, we could talk all day about that. Like, do I send them to a public school or do I, you know, keep them in a more of an integrated or, you know, more of a specialized school that works more on services and skill development and independent living skills versus a traditional school environment.
right.
And that's like a very personal decision for each family.
Yeah. And I think this is something that has come up in our community as well, in the SCNA community, and I talk with lots of other families too, but about that if the school district really cannot meet the needs of children, then they have to find and pay for a school that can, if it's a private school or some other kind of alternative school. So those are things that
Yeah.
you can argue for as well. And how do you just say, just kind of put out there, like, you don't do this, you can't can't care for my kid?
Yeah, I mean, so like I did that. I kind of already had done my due diligence when Lucy was transitioning to kindergarten and kind of knew where approximately I wanted to send her. So I said, can you send me the list of approved private schools in the district that would be appropriate given, you know, Lucy's recent evaluation? Can you send me a list of schools that would be appropriate? And then that's when they were like, oh, you want to send her to an approved private school? Okay, well, we have to evaluate her again. And I was like, okay, go ahead. And they came back and they were like, oh, she qualifies. And I was like, I know.
Well, that's a
Like,
good
yeah,
thing too to talk about, is evaluations and assessments, like building those in too as well, right? Because
yeah. I mean, especially I feel like it's not easier because my child has a rare disease diagnosis, but sometimes it is because you do actually have a true diagnosis, where there's a lot of kiddos out there that are undiagnosed. And I feel like that's really challenging because they're just like, well, they're delayed and they might just catch up, and oh, they have epilepsy, and so oh, we should have a seizure protocol, we should have a seizure plan, which, by the way, all of you listening should have a seizure plan in your IEP. But I'm sure everybody does, but just in case. But yeah, it's just, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down in terms of placement, accommodations in the classroom, evaluations, goal development. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Hence it's overwhelming for people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's a little overwhelming given that many of us probably listening are already trying to manage so many other things about our children's lives, right? All the medical appointments and the equipment and the prescriptions, and it's like, you know, so many full-time jobs. So it's wonderful to have advocates like you who are out there willing to help and arm parents with the kind of information they need to be able to enter these meetings, feeling empowered to stand up for what their kids deserve. Because I think that's a hard thing to do sometimes, especially when it's a whole other language that is spoken around this. So
yeah, it's really unintentional. It's really, I think, intentionally complicated, unnecessarily complicated, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
yeah,
It's like you said, like rare disease life is not easy. We constantly have stuff going on. There's never a like I'm bored kind of day, right? Like you're always like running to CVS or like yelling at an insurance company or like checking an insurance claim or submitting a super bill or like scheduling outpatient therapy or inpatient therapy or doctor's appointments. Like it's a lot. So yeah, this is just one more thing that's just like there's a lot of different layers to it, and you want to make sure you get it right. But sometimes I feel like parents just like, sometimes if you're having a meeting where you're just like, I'm not in this, like cancel the meeting. You gotta be in it. Like, just be like, I'm drained, I'm emotional, I'm not having a good week. Like, just be like, are you gonna be ready for Wednesday? Because Wednesday's when it's happening.
yeah,
Are you ready? Like, be prepared. Don't go in there just like, I feel like I've heard so many parents be like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna go to the IEP meeting and just show up and I'll see what they say. And I'm like, no, don't see what they say. Know what they're gonna say before they say it.
yeah,
Have the thought. So I just a big proponent of just like knowing like being an active participant, like really knowing your child, like having the confidence that, like trusting your mom gut again, like, what the right thing is. And in the back, when you get that little voice in the back of your head, it's like, I'm not okay with this. Like you need to be like, I'm not okay. It's not good enough. Like I was like, what's a short thing that I can say that's like when I don't know what to say and I'm like, I'm just done. I'm tired of fighting. I'm like, it's not good enough. It's like, that's it.
right.
And be like, we can talk about it later, but I have nothing left. Like I've left meetings where I'm like, I don't have anything else to say because I've said everything that I have to say.
Right.
So we can talk about this at a later time, but like what you're offering isn't good enough. So I'd like you to reconsider what I'm asking for. And if you can't, then you can't, but we're gonna have to take it to the next level and we'll see where that goes.
Right.
So I've never made a threat that I'm not willing to back up, but I haven't had to hire a lawyer yet.
Well, that says something.
Yeah.
Well,
Not against it, but I haven't needed it yet.
yeah. Sometimes it becomes necessary, but
It is necessary.
yeah,
For sure.
Well, Erin, thank you so much. This is really a fantastic discussion, and I'm sure that people who are listening in have learned something new. And your your website has some resources, and I know that there's definitely some benefits to bringing in somebody who knows their way around an IEP.
Yeah, and even just to have like another, rare mom in your corner to, bounce ideas off of. I think that's helpful, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to help anyone that wants to set up some time and chat more about like individual questions.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much, Erin.
So
A
fun.
pleasure to chat with you, and thanks for doing the work that you do.
Yeah, of course. You too. Thanks.
Thanks.
Talk
Take
to
care,
you soon.
everyone.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.